Hello, welcome to the West Ham Way YouTube. Myself, Mark Carlaw, and Captain Riley Finch. Riley and his hat, Finch.
Festive Finch, actually, mate. That's what I go by. Festive Finch. That's what I go by nowadays.
I know. I've got to start scratching. I've got to start sorting this out, haven't I? I can't be better names for you. It just isn't working. I've got to start doing some better prep. Mate, so January is fast approaching. Louis Zal. Now, that was a player we reported previously. We're interested back in November. It was reported by X, and then we've been sort of monitoring that for a little while. So that deal's now done. So that's our first bit of business done for January. He is going to be, well, by the time you see this, it will be confirmed. So, which is great news. Which is, good to get the first one over the line. Although, as we discussed, it is an academy player, but he is very highly rated. So I think it's one we need to certainly keep an eye on. So I'm quite excited about that. Now, January transfer window, obviously, naturally, everyone gets a little bit excited over that period and thinks, well, what can happen? But naturally, West Ham aren't very active in January, usually. We tend to try to, unless we desperately need to do business, we won't do business. You know what I mean? But having said that, we have over the time seen some great signings over January. I'm not knocking it. It's not to say we haven't done well in it before. We did. I remember we've got Jesse Lingard in, I believe, over January period, wasn't it? Was that right?
Yep.
Over January, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, January we've got Lingard in, we've had Souček, Bowen, and obviously the pretty controversial Mascherano and Tevez. I'm pretty sure.
Oh well, yeah,
that January as well.
That was
but
amazing.
We're going a bit further back there. But you're right. We don't tend to sign people in January, and when we do, they tend to be very sort of like they don't never really go into the first team. I think the only time we've done it really is with Souček and Bowen, and that was because we desperately needed something that was going to keep us up that season.
Yeah. And we've got to say that was fair play to David Moyes for those signings, because they actually did totally transform our season. And it did turn things around. So, yeah, no, you're right. And so I'm with you. It is one of those that you kind of look at and think, I don't expect us to go completely crazy in January. But let's be honest, mate. David Moyes is under massive pressure. Things aren't going great at the moment. I'm not to say that they won't turn around. I'd like to still think that Moyes will turn it. I'd really hope he does, and we can get back to where we need to be. But it begs the question: what are we going to be doing in January? Is David Moyes going to be looking into the market now? From what X has said so far, I don't think West Ham have got abundance of money to spend, which is kind of understandable considering the outlays we've just made in the summer. And let's not also forget that UEFA are watching us at the moment under, I think we're under a caution list or something, isn't it? Like a much.
It'd be so funny, wouldn't it? After Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea, the amount of money they spend, West Ham spend big one season, we get sanctioned. You could just see something like that happening.
Mate, absolutely. I mean, also the thing is, the likes of Man City and that don't really worry about it because they can deal with the fines. They can kind of, I think that sometimes they even put that in their budget. Say, look, we're going to get a £20 million fine, but it's worth it because we need to do the business or whatever. But as I said, I don't think we're a sort of club that's got that kind of capital sitting around to sort of to allow for that. So I think the club are mindful of that. They want to be quite careful. Personally, I wish we would just sort of do what the other clubs do and just say, oh, we don't give a shit. We're doing what we want to do, and if you want to hit us with a fine at the end of it, we'll pay it. You know what I mean? We'll go to court and battle you for it, whatever. But I don't think we will. So we have been linked, mate, with a few players now. As I say, Louis Zal's done. One player that's very, very heavily linked, and we have been linked with quite some time, is Wan-Bissaka from Manchester United, obviously formerly at Crystal Palace, London boy. I'm very keen on him, actually. He's one I would love to see happen. Now, from what we understand, it's going to be a loan deal. Firstly, mate, what's your thoughts, Wan-Bissaka? Is that a player you'd like to see come through the door?
Oh, yeah. I think anyone who's going to turn their nose up at Wan-Bissaka just has not watched him ever. I think Man United is a really difficult club to go to. And I think he has been hailed as the best one-on-one defender currently in the world. And that's not something that I've said. Jose Mourinho has said that. Plenty of managers have said that one-on-one there is not many better than Wan-Bissaka. And considering that that's our defensive side, we don't really tend to attack through the right-hand side of our defence. I would say that he sort of perfectly fits that kind of role. The only thing for me is that even if we do get a loan deal for him, we will never, ever be able to afford him because I think Wolves are interested and I think Palace are interested. And I think if they offer 25, 30 million for him, Man United are much more inclined to say, yeah, fair enough, we'll take that, unless they're not keen to let the player go, unless it's just a Jesse Lingard. But then why should we take him on just to do what we did with Lingard and get his career back up and running again?
I suppose the only way we could possibly do it is if they do the loan with the guarantee of buying in summer. So
there's no point in that, because if Wolves and Palace are ready to buy him now, they're just going to say, well, we'll do it now. There's no point negotiating, because let's be fair as well, West Ham is a terrible club to negotiate with. If you want to sell your player to West Ham, you know that they're going to, scrimp and scrape every single bit. They're going to go for every little bit of the contract. We're not a team that tends to say, that's what you want for him? Yeah, we'll pay it. Good. We want the player. Let's get him in. Whereas a Wolves or a Palace will probably sit there and say, look, we're ready to offer 25, 30 million now. Yeah. And if they're ready to do that, he's not going to come to West Ham on a loan to buy.
Well, yeah, I suppose, I do know what you're saying, but I suppose the only, if that is the case, if we're talking about Wolves and Palace, and I don't know much about that, but I mean, if that is the case, then the only thing we could sway our way is the player wanting to come to West Ham over them, and the fact he might want that is, one, it's London. Okay, Palace is in London too, but Palace probably can't offer him as much as West Ham can. One, in wages, and two, in European football. So there's that element. He might think, well, I actually, and also I'd be surprised if he'd want to return to the club that he left. I'd find that. I doubt he'd want to do that.
It seems like a big step backwards, doesn't it? Sort of like,
it just was like,
I failed at United. I've had to come back here a little bit.
I know that Zaha did that, to be fair, but yeah, I do think that would be my kind. If I was in his shoes, I probably wouldn't want to go back to Palace. I'd probably fancy doing something a bit different. But who knows? I mean, but it's certainly a player I'm quite keen on, and I really do hope we do explore it. Now, as you say, the loan is the only option for us. I think we're not going to be in a position to outlay 25, 30 million pounds in January. We're just not going to be able to do that. So that will be the only way to do it. So I'm guessing that is the route we'll try and go down. Is go down the route, the loan with an option to buy, or the guarantee that we'll purchase him in the summer. I don't know, but that's an interesting one. It's one that we just seem to be getting linked with quite a lot. So I imagine something could happen with that possibly. Now. Right, so before we recorded this, now I'm as bad as X with pronouncing names, okay? Really rubbish. So I did speak to Riley and say, Riley, can you help me with these names? So, right, Evan Indica, is that Indica?
Yeah, I'll give you that one, mate. I think that's good enough.
So, Frankfurt. Now, he's a defender, Frankfurt. West Ham are very keen. Again, I don't know whether that'll be a loan. Probably more likely be a loan option to buy, or possibly looking to do something in the summer. The only issue is with that one, apparently Arsenal were very keen on him. So if it's going to a tug of war between Arsenal, I think there's only going to be one winner, to be honest, especially at the moment of where they are in the league, and et cetera, et cetera. So, that's one we've been heavily linked with. What's your thoughts on him, Riley?
Well, there have been other centre-backs that, we might go into that definitely excite me more. But he's a very solid centre back, very powerful, quick. I think he works well in a 3-back formation. Again, will Moyes be going to a 3-back formation potentially if he's trying to sign someone like Ndicka? He's also not too old as well. I think, is he like 26, 27 sort of age?
Yeah, he's only young. So I mean, we've got, as you say, he's at that right age, and someone that you can sort of, basically enough experience, and someone that not necessarily needs to go and take his time to get embedded into the squad. You'd like to think with his experience, he can walk straight into the West Ham side. So yeah, but yeah, I agree. From what I know of the player, I think that he seems a decent enough player to come in, and because we do have concerns at centre back at the moment, don't we? We have issues here. We've got question marks. Well, Craig Dawson's future is pretty much looking like he's going to be only here for the short term now. I think he'd probably be with the end of the season. But that's the most we're going to get out of him. Kurt Zuma's injuries are a real concern. You've got Ogbonna, pretty much exactly the same, and also he's aging. So it's certainly something we need to get sorted. So yeah, I do hope that we can get that addressed. Then you got Kamada of also he plays for Frankfurt, doesn't he? Japanese. Now, what did you quote him as before we recorded?
Well, you've mispronounced him, mate, because he is actually called the Japanese Messi. That is generally what people call him. I mean, obviously, right. He's not quite at Messi's level, but he's got a similar build. He's one of them players where he's a bit smaller, so he's got low gravity and he just sort of glides with the ball. And I think when we played him last season, when we played Frankfurt last season, he was really, really dangerous and he gave us a lot of problems. I'm pretty sure he hit the post 1 or 2 times during our matches. I don't see Frankfurt letting him go, though, to be honest. I think that's a very interesting Especially if it's not really a position we need, especially. So unless it was going to be a loan deal, I really don't think that would happen, because I think he's a good player for Frankfurt. He's happy at the club. They've got Champions League football as well, so we can't really, use that sort of ploy to get him to come. I think he's at an age now where, like, if he saw out his career at Frankfurt, it wouldn't really be a big deal to him. So right. I'm very surprised that we're going in for him, because I think it'd be very difficult to land him without a decent bit of money, to be honest. Probably between 20 and 30 million, maybe 15 if that's something that they would do. But very surprised to see us linked with him, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that's been listed. Now, the thing is with West Ham is, so I think a lot of people get the impression that, that X possibly just goes out and does a scattergun and just lists out every single player on the earth and then hopes any of them, which just isn't the case. Unfortunately, the problem with West Ham is that's kind of similar to how we operate. We throw the net far and wide and they narrow it down. So we're going to get linked as usual with pretty much every player. Now, one thing he did say, X, was that one was the low market and two was please look at players that are coming to the end of their contract. So that possibly might fall into that category there, Riley. So maybe he's just coming towards the end of the contract. Might be, the club might be getting a little bit anxious and wanting to, possibly move him on. So that's why they might be, that these are the players that West Ham are basically, it's typical West Ham. They're going to try and get bargains where we can. So that might fall into that category. An interesting one that I think's got some legs in it. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a very popular one, to be honest, amongst fans. And I'm still a little bit, I'm not sure, but Michael Keane of Everton. So it looks as though he is being earmarked as the player to replace Craig Dawson should he depart. Now, whether that's going to be in January or the summer, I'm not too sure, but that is apparently who Moyes is very, very keen on. I think he's fallen out of favour at Everton.
For good reason.
He might fancy the change. Say again?
Said for good reason, mate. I mean, you look. I'm not even joking. You look at Everton's downfall, and Michael Keane is right at the bloody heart of it. He is awful. I'm sorry. I want him. I know. We sort of weren't really happy with Dawson, mainly because he wasn't a very exciting signing. But I'd rather have Diop than Keane. I don't. There's no point getting him in that squad. He's not an experienced head like Dawson. He's not gonna. If someone's injured, he's not going to come in for a game. Honestly, he's going to be as detrimental as someone like Roberto to the squad. He's going to be that player that comes in and he's just a detriment. And if he signs and he's brilliant, fair enough. I've never been more wrong in my life, but he is awful. I don't want to see him anywhere near West Ham. I don't think any Everton fan wants to see him anywhere near the first team at the moment. I mean, you can't get in a relegation-stricken Everton squad and he wants to come to West Ham, Conference League, trying to actually improve on our season. I think... Mate,
I think he'd probably come in more as a backup, but I do know what you're saying. You do kind of think, okay. I mean, as I say, I'm loath to always turn my nose up completely because I have done this before and then I've sort of been proven wrong. But
I'm happy to be proved wrong on this one, mate. If he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. But I'm sticking to my guns. I don't want Michael Keane anywhere near West Ham.
Well, that is the heavy link at the moment. There is a bit of a heavy link with that one. So
I think it will happen. I do think it will happen.
You actually think it will?
Yeah, Moyes has liked him for a very long time. It was between him and Tarkowski as who he's going to sign I think, a year ago. And, I think now that it makes sense. He's going to be cheap. I don't, it doesn't make sense to me. Oh, well, it makes sense to me, but I just don't see the point of bringing him in when he's just not good enough. He's miles off what we need.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's going to be a very, very short-term deal, you're not going to really be playing. You're purely for backup. We're going to sign you up a 6-month contract.
I'd rather have an academy player fill that spot.
I mean, this is the other thing, mate. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and you know what? That's a big thing for me. I do sometimes wonder why we don't do that more, because I actually love seeing the academy players getting more go, and also they cherish it. They really work their socks off for it. So I do know what you're saying. I mean. Look, let's be honest. Michael Keane would be a typical Moyes signing. It would just be literally just epitomise what David Moyes is, how he operates.
David Moyes.
It really is. It's not going to surprise me if it happens. I know it's going to be massively unpopular. It wouldn't surprise me if it happens, but I mean, I don't know. Look, I don't know how close it is or whether it really will happen. I don't know, but there is a link there to him. And the fact that X has mentioned it, and we've also mentioned it in an article. That's always a bit of a trend I've noticed. So if I'm asked to put something in an article, that usually means something. So, but anyway, let's wait and see. Let's just wait and see on that one. Adarabioyo, so for Fulham, The interesting player. So now, from what I understand, Man City. I believe he came through the academy at Man City. He's an Englishman. He's done quite well at Fulham. Now, from what X has told us, is that the player's very unhappy at Fulham, wants to move, and we are very keen on him. I don't know much more than that. He's 26 years old, and that's it. That's all I really know on the situation, mate. Now, is this someone you'd be quite keen to see come to West Ham?
Oh, mate, he's incredible. He's such a good centre-back. Big, powerful, strong. I think he has got some attitude problems, and I think that sort of links to his time with Guardiola at City. He sort of was let go, I think, because he did have some attitude problems. He's also had quite a tough time being in the limelight. That the media's not been very kind to him, so he kind of struggled with that a little bit. But I'm very surprised. I mean, I didn't know he was having problems at Fulham, but I'm very surprised to hear that they'd be willing to let him go because he's been immense for them this season. He's been. I mean, Tim Ream has probably been their best centre back, but Adebayo has been absolutely incredible, and I think he would be brilliant for West Ham. He'd be top on my list, but I don't see it happening. I think unless we can snap him up for sort of 15 odd million because Fulham want to get rid of him, or they want to integrate Diop into the team, which by the way, lads, is not a good idea. They might be inclined to do that. I'm not the Fulham board of directors. But I would love Adebayo at the club, mate. I think he'd be incredible for us. And, I think if you've got Aguerd as the ball playing centre back and then Adebayo as the kind of, the man mountain, I think that's a really good centre back partnership. And both 26 years old. So that's probably, Wan-Bissaka's probably my number one. But if that doesn't happen, I'd love to see Adebayo come to the club. But again, I don't see that happening, to be honest.
Well, let's wait and see. I mean, as I say, these are still very early days, and we're not even at the window yet. So, let's be honest, there's going to be lots of twists and turns. There always is. I don't expect West Ham to make a great deal of business happen. I just don't. But let's be honest. The main focus of West Ham now is pure and simple. It's just the next few games. We've got to turn these results around. Moyes has got to get his playing because I just can't see him surviving if we don't start firing very, very soon. So, but yeah, certainly some names there to watch out for, and obviously we'll keep giving updates as and when we can, mate.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Cheers.